Well, Andy, thanks ever so much for joining me at the Numan Arms this afternoon. Your first, maybe biggest break was with Gary Newman in '79. When you...
Yep, definitely was. Well, we'd released a single, Electricity, on Factory Records, and Factory's idea was that effectively it was going to be a demo to move us on. That was actually their kind of business plan, was to develop artists and then sell them on, because they weren't very big at the time. And we had been offered a deal, which was great, and then we came down to London to play at the Nashville Rooms in the summer of '79. And of course, what we didn't know was that Gary came to see us at that gig. And apparently I think he was still working in the Beggars Banquet shop. Is that right? Did he used to work in Beggars Banquet or something? Or he'd picked up a single, loved it, and was preparing already to go on tour. And obviously, with just two of us in a tape recorder, we fitted perfectly in front of the curtain because he had this massive stage set. And he invited us to go on tour, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of our lives. And because we'd signed but we didn't actually have any money yet, he was so kind. I mean, he carried our equipment in the trucks. He let us travel with him on his coach. Big Mick, his security guy, introduced us on stage every night. In fact, I even remember one night at Wolverhampton Civic Hall, his mother ironed our shirts because she felt sorry for us. So I mean, it was an incredible tour, and it was, I mean, amazing to see, obviously, to see Gary, who was just massive at the time, playing to full houses and giving us the opportunity to play to all these people. So many people that I've met subsequently say, "Oh, first time I ever saw you, first time I ever heard of you, you opened for Gary Newman." So it was an amazing opportunity for us. And then, of course, little did we know that the next year we would have our first two hits, including Enola Gay, and we would headline and sell out the exact same tour exactly a year later.
You did, indeed. But I mean, it must have been quite mind-blowing going on tour with Gary at that moment in time, with his huge lights, and you were suddenly playing in front of a full audience, a massive audience, sort of thing. But
it was. I mean, it was a huge step. We had only played, clubs and things. We'd never played to more than a few hundred people. So this was a quite terrifying but amazing. And to see Gary every night and to see him playing to these audiences and this incredible stage set and lighting rig that we'd never had the opportunity to use previously. It was amazing to see how it was done at that level, to see an amazing band, great people who were working with Gary, and really it was a huge learning experience for us.
But you never went off to America with him. Is that what you weren't asked, or you were then doing your own?
No, I think really after we did the tour with Gary in the autumn of '79, we were basically then going to go and write and we'd written it, but go and record our first album. So that was, I don't think it was ever even considered, because we were going to go into the studio, do our first album, which came out early in 1980.
So then, moving up to present day, leaving Gary alone now. I mean, he did support you at an arena gig though, didn't he? In Liverpool, was it Liverpool?
Yeah, no, he toured with us in the mid-90s when it wasn't the original band. The original OMD split up in the end of the '80s, and I carried on with three other people live. And we did a short arena tour and asked Gary to play with us, which was a complete flip around. But he said yes, and it was great to catch up with him and meet him again, and just to see how incredibly loyal the Newmanoid fans were. I mean, I always used to joke, it was like, Gary always just, because he didn't drink, but he used to say, "Oh, I'll see you in the bar at the hotel," because he often seemed to be in the same hotel as us. And you could never get to talk to Gary because there was usually about 50 Newmanoid fans around him. He just had this hardcore following. So that was great. And of course, I saw Gary play in Liverpool a couple of years ago on an anniversary tour, and he played at the Olympia, and it was just great. Again, we hadn't seen each other for a long time, over 20 years, and it was just the same old welcoming, lovely Gary. Great to see Gemma again, who I'd met back in the 90s, and they're just such lovely people.
Indeed, indeed. But then bringing us up to today, I mean, you've had to cancel a lot of shows last year. You yourself had caught COVID, I believe, yeah, in October.
Yes, I was fortunate. I had it quite mildly. The fatigue went on for 5 or 6 weeks, but the actual real illness was quite short.
And now you're doing your You, Me and OMD in support of your road crew and everything. I mean, how is that going as such?
Obviously, we were supposed to do it in October, and I had COVID. I thought I'd be over it quite quickly, so I was still planning to go ahead and do the gig. But then Liverpool went into Tier 3, and we were told we couldn't come down to London, and it was just logical to postpone it. So we did, and it's now at the end of March. I'm hoping it's not going to be postponed, but I'm not 100% sure that it won't have to be again. But you know what the amazing thing was? All the people who'd bought tickets, there was going to be about 200 people attending in person, distance in the balcony, and obviously a lot of people online. Every single person who bought tickets hung on to them, said, keep the money, we'll see you next year. Yeah. And so actually, before Christmas last year, we were able to give several £1,000s each to all of our 10 crew who we were trying to raise the money for. So, you know, it wasn't massive, but it helped. And I think more than anything else, you know, our crew just said to us, the fact that you want to do this for us just makes us feel that you care and you love us and we're important to you. They are, you know, I mean, I don't know Gary's crew, but I'm sure he probably works with the same people over and over again. They are your touring family. They are the people that you stand by and you live and fall by as well. You know, the 1 weak link in the chain live, the whole show is ruined. So these people are so crucial, and they've had a horrible year. So we were just trying to do something for them.
I know, it's absolutely brilliant. And you've got a tour and some dates lined up for this year. Is it fingers crossed, or are we actually at the point where we think it will happen?
I'm nervous about the summer festivals.
Yeah.
You know, Glastonbury's already been postponed again. We haven't had any festivals cancel or postpone yet, but not sure that the government's going to let 20,000 people stand in a field in June, July and August. We'll see, but nothing's been cancelled yet. November, hopefully.
Should be.
That's when we've got this big UK tour. And December, we're hoping that was postponed from last year. We're going to New Zealand and Australia with Simple Minds. So I'm hoping the end of the year will be really positive. But you know what it's going to look like until we get there, I don't honestly know. Next year is going to be really, really busy. We've got an American tour and a big European continental tour. But yeah, I mean, it's just been, I haven't played live for almost exactly a year. I think the last live gig was the 15th of February last year in Paris. I mean, initially COVID didn't bother me that much because, well, none of us thought it was going to last this long, but we'd just done 75 gigs. So I was happy to have a rest for a few months, and the weather was great, wasn't it? In April and May last year. So it was all okay, but now it just seems to be like Groundhog Day. But you know, we will see. I mean, I think that people will be just desperate to have that live experience again when we're all allowed to.
I mean, have you found it hard yourself, obviously not doing a show of any description?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the longest I've gone not playing live since the band reformed 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And interestingly as well, I mean, and I'm sure Gary probably finds this, that for the first time in my life, about 4 years ago, we started to earn more money from live than we do from owning the intellectual property rights, because, you know, nobody buys anything anymore. It's all streamed, and the royalty rates are just frankly collapsed. So quite fortunate that you know, we're still a strong sort of touring item, and I'm sure Gary probably feels the same. But it's just yeah, you know, we've tried lots of online things. We've rummaged through our archives and put up videos of things. You know, we filmed ourselves just over a year ago playing at the Hammersmith. What's it called these days? Apollo Odeon. I don't change his bloody name. But it's we filmed ourselves playing there. We just put a static camera at front of house on the mixing desk, just to as a document of the tour.
Yeah.
And we put that on. There was like 250,000 people watched it live. It was amazing. So, you know, we've tried our best, but you know what it's like at a gig. Nothing beats the kind of that emotional tipping point you get where the band comes on stage, the crowd lift themselves, the adrenaline, the vibe, the music starts. And it's that, for that one moment in that one space, there's you and a few thousand people who are absolutely connected, and you cannot recreate that online in any way, shape or form.
No, because Gary had he was doing an interview the other day, or I can't remember, and he said that he'd had 1 million downloads and got a check for £37.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, it is pathetic. I actually saw that quote from him. I mean, there's a lot of people trying to increase the royalty rate, but you know, a lot of us oldies, we're still on royalties that go back to, you know, the year of the Ark, when record companies could justify paying you small royalties. One, because you sold millions of records, and two, because they had packaging costs and manufacturing costs and distribution costs. They don't have any of those costs now. You know, they just send a file to YouTube or Spotify, and you know, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and there's no overheads for them, so they don't have the excuse for paying the low royalties they used to. But the problem is, of course, you know, this sounds very greedy and very rich coming from people like myself, who, you know, I can't complain. I have made a good living out of the music industry, and I'm blessed. But I still feel that the small amount of royalties that are paid through finally to the artist is essentially license theft, and it's got much worse for smaller artists. You know, when we first started, our first album, you know, went gold, and we had one top 20 hit, and, you know, the record company made enough money to retain us, and they gave us another advance, and we made, you know, we had a living in the music industry, even though we weren't making a lot of money. But if you were now a small band that wasn't selling that many records, you cannot make a living out of the tiny amount of money that you get given. And also, you know, I think younger bands as well are seeing the problem now that with COVID. I mean, my son is in a band.
Yeah.
They haven't played for a year. They made some great, you know, they just started. They made a couple of great singles, just starting to get gigs and touring. Everything has been crushed. The life has been crushed out of them because they haven't got a back catalogue. They haven't got fans. They've got nothing to fall back on. So it's been unbelievably frustrating for them.
I just think, yeah, very, very much so. You know, it's frustrating and frightening when you're, you know, like that, isn't it? You know, when you're young and everything. How are you?
The only good thing about COVID, to interject, is nobody's allowed to play in Europe yet, so there's still time for the EU and the government to try and sort out the right royal pickle we're in at the moment, because if they don't sort something out, we all need visas. Everybody needs a visa. There's going to be loads of paperwork. There's going to be carnets with all the equipment. And again, we make enough profit in Europe that it'll reduce our profit, but we'll be okay. But the younger bands, you know, if you're just going to try and rent a van and go and play a few gigs in Europe and be lucky if you got paid €250 and you slept on somebody's floor, you can't do that because the overheads are going to be massive.
Well, it's strange. That was the next thing I was going to ask you. You know, how
okay.
Works, but I think you've answered that one. So,
well, I mean, you know, everybody had their reasons for voting the way they did 4 years ago. I I'm a Remainer. I believe in people staying together. The EU had its problems, but wasn't perfect at all. But I believe in people coming together, not separating. And I knew, particularly for our business, I knew this was going to happen. I remember what it was like in the old days when, you know, you had to get all these work visas, you had all the withholding taxes, and the hardest part actually was the carnet. You know, you have to have, for those who don't know what a carnet is, you have to have a list of all of your equipment with all the serial numbers and its value, and that goes into a country with the driver of the truck, and it gets checked, and it so make sure that everything comes back out of the country when you come back off tour. Now, in Europe, when the borders were becoming more, you know, easy to go through, the last thing the customs officers wanted, because a British truck going through the border was a rock and roll truck was always going to be going through the border at like 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
They wanted to be snoozing in their office. They did not like having to get up, put their shoes back on, and go out. So they knew that a rock and roll truck is loaded musical instruments first, then the PA, then the lights, because the lights come out first, the PA, and then so they would just go, they were so pissed off, they go, right, I want to see that bass guitar, serial number 903521. And they knew damn well it was right up the far end of the truck. The whole truck had to be emptied to get to my bass guitar. And then they go, okay, reload. They just fuck with you because they were pissed off. And that's going to happen again.
You think that's the way it's going to go, yeah?
Well, unless they get something sorted out. Because at the moment, there isn't even a deal with the Schengen area. So you have to get a visa for every country. You could get challenged at every border. We just don't know. You know, nobody's, and again, it's the usual thing. The EU says we made an offer. The UK said it wasn't good enough. Who knows what's been on the table, but nothing's been agreed. So let's hope they can sort that out before we're all allowed to go back into Europe, because it's going to be a nightmare.
Because
even Roger Daltrey, who wanted Brexit, thinks it's a nightmare.
Well, Elton John had a big thing about it the other day, didn't he? Like he said, it's not going to affect him, but the smaller bands, as you were then saying, it'd be a nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want people to think that, you know, the big name artists and the people who've made money out in the industry are complaining because it's going to ruin our profit margin. It's going to be hard for our crew. It's going to be hard for our truck drivers, but it's going to be impossible for young artists who are not getting paid enough. If you've got to get a whole load of visas and paperwork that costs hundreds and thousands, you can't go to Europe and play small clubs and build your audience like we did when we were young.
Well, yeah, for sure. So where do you see this year with OMD going? I mean, what are your plans apart from talking?
I've been really busy. I'll tell you why. COVID, I've been stuck at home, and COVID has allowed me to rediscover the creative power of utter bloody boredom. So I have a programming room in my house,
right,
and there will be a new OMD album.
Really? Good.
Yeah. So that's one good thing that's come out of COVID for me. And particularly actually because just before the November lockdown, my son went to America to visit his mother, and he's still there. So whilst he's not at home and trying to get in the programming room, I'm finishing the album.
Well, you know, they say there's a silver lining on every cloud. So, well, that's brilliant. And, you know, let's hope this March thing happens. I mean,
we'll see. I mean, I say, you know, we haven't heard no yet, but nobody said it's definitely going to happen. As I say, we're just blessed, and our crew were blessed that the people who had tickets hung on to them. And hopefully, if it does get postponed, hopefully it won't. But if it does, it won't be too much longer. I do need to start getting fit, because obviously, you know, I do dance around like a complete idiot on stage, and I have to be fit to humiliate myself that way. So there's no better incentive than knowing that I've really got to be fit to go on tour. So I will be going back out on my bike and going to the gym if it opens, so I can get fit for March. And then we'll see what the summer brings. But you know, the funny thing is, the last 2 years we were so busy on tour, because we had a new album out, and then we seem to have a series of 40th anniversaries, Gary's doing the same, but everything seems to be the 40th anniversary of something at the moment, which is a great excuse to tour. I mean, but I mean, hopefully, in a year or two, we will go out and do a new tour. But this November tour is celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Architectural Morality album. We will play the whole album. So, there's lots of things to look forward to in the fairly near and medium future. And listen, we will get through this. And people love live music. It's been demonstrated to us how much we miss it when we can't have it. And I cannot wait to get out there and just feel that adrenaline buzz again and connect emotionally with all those people.
I must admit, it's funny. I see a lot of bands over the years, and not today, but when I go to, say, Ipswich, I still call it the Gaumont. I don't think that's called the Gaumont now.
I still think of it as the Gaumont. Yeah. I played there for the first time with Gary.
I know. I was there.
Yeah.
But
and you still have to go outside to catering and upstairs when it rains. It's not near the dressing room. It's a separate building.
I must admit, when I often look at the crowd, which I suppose I shouldn't be doing, but when you look at the crowd, it seems to be everyone is having a fantastic time, and that must be amazing that you're putting on a show, and every single, like I said, I look around, everyone's dancing, singing, having a blinding time. I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's we are blessed that we have been successful and that people like our music, and they know we can play well live, so they come and see us again and again. And we always used to actually insist that we played in Ipswich, because I think a lot of people bypass it. Don't tell anybody, but we're not playing there this time around in November. I do apologise. So you can shout at me. We just tried to do a slightly scaled down but bigger venue tour. It suck it and see. We'll see. I mean, it is an amazing feeling. You go out there and you give people yourself 100%. Never dial it in, because those people might be their only chance to see you for 2 or 3 years. You might have played London the night before, but when you get to Ipswich, that's that crowd's night to see you, and you give it 100%. And the vibe in it's the Regent now, isn't it? The vibe in that place is exceptional. It just feels amazing. I just wish they would get dressing rooms that were big enough to have more than a 1.5 seat sofa, so that when I want to sleep before I go on stage, I'm not curled up in a fetal position. I can stretch out. This is the reality of playing in Ipswich, folks. It's hard work.
But you're right what you say, because I was talking to you a few years ago there before you went on stage, and you were really ill, weren't you? And you didn't feel.
Oh God, yeah. 3 years ago. Yeah. I had septic tonsillitis on tour. Not fun.
But you performed as if you were fine. And that was amazing.
I could still sing. So even though I felt like death, adrenaline and knowing those people were out there and a quick shot of vodka would get me out there every night. And, for 90 minutes, I mostly forgot that I didn't feel very well, because I was just buzzing off the vibe of the people. That whole tour was grim, because doctor looked down my throat in Leicester. When a doctor looks down your throat and just says, "Oh shit," you're in trouble. And he told me I had septic tonsillitis, and I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well, 1, it'll hurt." I said, "I know that already." He said, 2, you can sing and it won't affect your vocal cords unless the sepsis bursts and it runs into your vocal cords. I'm like, I don't want to hear that. Oh, no. And so, but one thing it did change, unfortunately, was we did a lot of VIP meet and greets when we were on tour.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing that last time we toured 14 months ago, because I know it's a beautiful opportunity to meet people, and I like talking to people. But you know, when I got to sing for 90 minutes, meeting and doing a long sound check again for people is actually a strain on me.
Yeah.
And I'd rather concentrate on the gig, great though it is to be able to meet people. And you know, people come and tell you that, you know, oh, you know, when I went through a bad time and my parents separated when I was 16, your music got me through, or whatever. You hear these beautiful stories that make you realize that your music touches people. It's just, but you also, every day, at least one of the 30 people comes up and goes, "I really like, oh, shouldn't be here, but nice to meet you." And you kind of go, "Oh no, I don't want to shake your hand, but oh no." And that's how I got sick on that tour.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, it's I think staying in my bubble and wearing a face mask might be something.
It might be the new way forward. Well, Andy, it's been brilliant talking to you.
Always good to talk to you, Steve. Thank you very much.
That's no problem.
If you speak to Mr. Newman, give him my love.
I will do. I will do. Hopefully, he's desperate to get back on tour. So, who knows? And I'm looking forward to seeing you hopefully the end of the year or whenever it is. Is it October, September?
Yeah, November of this year. Really, I mean, listen, if we're still not allowed to go to concerts by the end of this year, I think people will be really going nuts.
Yeah.
So let's hope. Hey.
Yeah, let's really hope so. Andy, brilliant to talk to you, and thank you very, very much for taking the time out for me.
Thank you very much, sir. Take care.
That's
Bye.
all right.